The hangar smelled of fuel oil and metal, and Maria moved slowly across the concrete, her hands calloused from years of labor yet steady as she checked the small Cessna waiting for her. The SEAL Admiral standing near the doorway, his eyes narrowing, in curiosity as he watched the single mother of two adjust the controls, the story of her life hidden in the lines of her face, the radio crackling faintly in the background. Yet she ignored it, focusing on the plane and the strange tension that seemed to hum in the air around them. Admiral Hayes had seen many pilots in his time, yet something about Maria made him pause. Her presence calm, yet commanding, her fingers moving over the instruments with a certainty that defied her humble background. He stepped closer, asking softly how she had learned to fly, and the question hung in the air heavy with expectation as she looked up, meeting his gaze, and smiled faintly, and the Admiral felt a chill as if her eyes were hiding secrets he could not yet comprehend. Maria spoke softly of lessons learned at odd hours of the night, balancing work and motherhood. She told him of flights over open fields and broken runways, of nights spent studying manuals by candlelight, the Admiral listening carefully, yet skeptical, thinking surely no one could rise from such obscurity to mastery of the skies. Yet her calm voice and the way she handled the plane suggested otherwise, and the tension in the hangar thickened as if the plane itself waited for some revelation. She climbed into the cockpit with practiced ease, her movements fluid, the Admiral following cautiously, not wanting to disturb her routine, yet unable to tear his eyes away from her precision, each switch flipped, each dial checked with care, the engine humming to life under her fingers, the sound vibrating through the hangar, a heartbeat in metal and fuel. And the Admiral felt a sudden anticipation, as if the story he was witnessing was about to turn and reveal something he could not have imagined. The first takeoff was smooth. Maria guiding the plane down the runway, her eyes scanning instruments and horizon. Simultaneously, the Admiral standing rigid, his hands clasped behind his back as the Cessna lifted into the morning sky, the sunlight catching the wings, the shadows of clouds moving across the tarmac, and he realized that her skill was undeniable. Yet there was something more, something in the way she commanded the aircraft that hinted at a story untold, and he leaned forward, straining to understand the secret behind her calm mastery. Hours passed with maneuvers and precision flights, Maria explaining briefly her process, yet focusing mostly on her hands and eyes as they tracked the instruments, the Admiral following every movement, noting her instinctive corrections, the plane responding as if it were an extension of her body, the wind whipping past and the roar of the engine filling the space between them, and a sense of unease mixed with awe grew. Inside him, for the story he had anticipated was shifting into something beyond explanation, and he felt a question forming that he dared not yet speak. Finally, she landed the plane gently, the tires kissing the runway with expert care, the Admiral approaching cautiously, his eyes wide with both respect and disbelief. He had watched hundreds of flights, yet none held the tension of this one. He asked again how she had learned to fly, and this time Maria paused longer, her hands resting lightly on the yoke, her eyes locking with his, and he felt the weight of something unsaid hanging between them, and the air around the hangar seemed to still in anticipation. She leaned back slightly in her seat and whispered a call sign, her lips barely moving, the syllables strange and foreign, yet ringing with authority. The Admiral froze, as if the words themselves struck him across the chest. He realized suddenly that this was no ordinary flight or pilot, that the story of this woman was far deeper and darker than he had imagined, that the quiet skill she displayed hid a history of trials that could shake even him, and the wind outside seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his reaction. The sun shifted behind the clouds, casting shadows across the hangar and the plane gleaming under the light. Maria stepping down from the cockpit, her posture relaxed, yet emanating command. The Admiral staring at the empty seat, her call sign echoing in his mind, the sense of awe and disbelief pressing against his chest the realization that she had faced challenges unimaginable and yet mastered the sky and the engines of the hangar seeming to hum in agreement, and he took a step forward, uncertain what question to ask next as she packed her small kit. Into the back of the plane, the Admiral followed cautiously, noting every movement. The mud-caked boots, the streaks of dirt from her daily work, the ordinary trappings of life, and yet the extraordinary mastery of flight, and he knew that the story was only partially revealed, that her history contained secrets of courage, survival, and defiance that had yet to surface, and that every word of her call sign contained weight he could not yet measure, and he felt the pulse of suspense tighten suddenly. A distant rumble echoed across the airfield, the plane vibrating slightly under its own power. Maria stepping back calmly, the Admiral's eyes narrowing, his mind racing with possibilities, the history of her training, the long nights, the clandestine. Hours of practice, the sacrifice of comfort and ease, all hidden beneath ordinary life. And yet the call sign now pulsing in his memory, suggesting battles fought beyond sight, the wind shifting and carrying a tension that made every breath charged with anticipation, and he realized the story was far from over. The hangar doors creaked in the early wind as Maria adjusted her cap and looked at him squarely. The Admiral caught himself holding his breath for the moment, stretched taut with expectation. The call sign lingering unspoken yet resonating across the quiet morning, the air thick with possibility and history, and he felt a strange mixture of admiration and fear for what she represented, and the quiet hum of the plane waiting behind her seemed to echo his unspoken thoughts, the suspense building like a storm on the horizon. The first part of her story complete, yet the greater truth hidden in her history remained. The Admiral realizing that he had only glimpsed the surface of courage, skill, and resilience. The call sign, a key to a deeper understanding of trials endured in silence. The plane standing as a testament to mastery and survival, and he knew that whatever lay ahead would challenge every assumption he had held about ability. Struggle and triumph, and the morning light stretching across the tarmac held its own suspense waiting for the next revelation. Maria climbed back into the cockpit, her hands steady, her eyes scanning the instruments, the SEAL Admiral standing a few paces behind, his curiosity taut as wire. The plane humming beneath her fingers, a living thing responding to every subtle touch. The morning wind carrying the scent of fuel and earth, the hangar silent, except for the low roar of the engine, and the Admiral feeling a pulse of tension that seemed to stretch across the entire airfield as if the world itself were holding its breath. She taxied down the runway slowly, the tires pressing against concrete wet with dew. The plane gliding forward like a shadow, her movements precise, the Admiral following every motion, trying to reconcile the woman he had just met with the skill and authority emanating from her. The call sign lingering in his mind, strange yet familiar like an echo of history. He could not place the suspense building with each passing second, the plane lifting effortlessly into the sky as if guided by invisible hands and the tension waiting to snap at any misstep. The wind rushed past the cockpit windows, Maria banking carefully over the treetops, the plane responding fluidly, every adjustment exact, her eyes scanning both instruments and horizon. Simultaneously, the Admiral leaning forward, straining to comprehend how she had attained such mastery. His mind racing through possibilities, training clandestine connections, innate talent, and the hours of silent work hinted at by her posture and ease, and he felt an unshakable sense that the full story of her call sign had yet to reveal itself, and the suspense mounted. She performed a series of intricate maneuvers, loops, and dives executed with perfect coordination, the Admiral gripping the edge of the viewing platform below the cockpit. Every motion smooth yet daring, the mud-streaked boots and worn flight jacket belying the extraordinary control she possessed. The call sign now echoing faintly in his thoughts, a key to something larger than a simple flight, and he realized that every skill displayed was a chapter of untold trials and endurance, leaving him both awed and apprehensive. Maria leveled the plane above a river glinting in the early sunlight, the reflection casting fleeting shadows across the cockpit. The SEAL Admiral, silent, his breath caught in his chest, as he observed her focus and instinctive corrections. The maneuvers becoming a language in themselves, every subtle adjustment communicating control mastery and defiance of expectation. The call sign hovering in his mind now, a puzzle demanding resolution. The suspense building as he felt that revelation was imminent, yet just out of reach. She banked sharply around a cluster of tall trees, the wings slicing through. Morning mist. The Admiral gripping the railing as his heart hammered in time with the engine. The plane alive under her hands, responding to instinct and training, combined, the call sign suddenly resonating as a symbol of experience, endurance, and hidden history. The mud-streaked and weary face of a mother now reflecting a story of battles fought unseen, and the suspense twisting tighter, knowing that the next moment could unravel everything he assumed about skill, courage, and resilience. Suddenly, the engine hummed differently, a subtle vibration, Maria, noting immediately, her hands adjusting with micro-precision, the plane stabilizing flawlessly, the Admiral staring in disbelief, the skill not just in flying, but in sensing and correcting the aircraft with almost supernatural intuition. The call sign now almost a word of command, history, reputation, and respect encoded in a syllable, and the suspense coiling like a spring as he realized the woman before him was more than a pilot. She was a force shaped by unseen trials. She leveled the aircraft above an abandoned airfield, the concrete scarred from years of neglect. The Admiral scanning the ground, noting every detail, the mud and streaked uniforms juxtaposed with her flawless execution. The call sign echoing in his mind as though it carried weight beyond the ordinary. The plane responding as an extension of her will, every movement precise, deliberate, and suspense, stretching taut, as if the world awaited her next action with bated breath. Maria dipped low over the airfield, skimming the tops of rusted hangars, the wind whistling in controlled chaos. The Admiral instinctively stepping back, the realization hitting him that this flight was a demonstration not of simple ability, but of command, experience, and survival skill earned in the crucible of life itself. The call sign now revealing itself as a banner of endurance, a signature of past trials, and the suspense tightening, because the next revelation was inevitable and unstoppable. Suddenly she pulled up sharply, the plane climbing into clouds, the mist swallowing the wings and instruments, the Admiral squinting through haze trying to track motion, the wind whipping past like a living force, her fingers flying over. Controls every adjustment, a testament to mastery and instinct. The call sign vibrating in his consciousness, a symbol of hidden battles and strength forged under pressure. The suspense coiling as the next moment promised to disclose the story behind. The legend. Maria leveled again above the tree line, the sun glinting off the wings. She guided the aircraft toward a narrow canyon, the Admiral gripping the railing, the sheer walls closing in as the plane navigated precisely, the call sign now registering in full as an emblem of survival courage and relentless determination, her skill defying all expectation. The suspense reaching a breaking point as he understood that what she had endured was far beyond ordinary comprehension, and the next maneuver could reveal everything. She dipped the plane through the canyon, twisting around rocky outcrops, the wind tearing at wings, every adjustment flawless. The Admiral awestruck at the synchronicity of thought and motion, the call sign now resonating with history. The weight of challenges overcome. The tension of life lived fully, despite hardship. The suspense snapping taut as he realized the story of her mastery would soon unfold completely, and every second now carried the weight of revelation. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the canyon wall. The plane banked instinctively, Maria reacting as if anticipating the presence, the Admiral frozen in place, realizing the depth of her awareness, every subtle motion, a defensive strategy honed over years of challenge and perseverance. The call sign echoing through his mind, a key unlocking understanding, and the suspense spiraling as he waited for her next move, knowing the secret of her past was about to surface. She emerged from the canyon, the plain, steady above an open valley, the sun breaking through clouds, the Admiral exhaling slowly, the mastery undeniable. The call sign now fully understood as a symbol of her journey of hardship, courage, and dedication. The mud-streaked and worn exterior, now a mask for the extraordinary skill beneath, and the suspense lingering, because even with understanding, there remained the final truth about the trials that forged her and what they had truly witnessed. Maria glided to a smooth landing, the tires, kissing the tarmac gently. The Admiral stepping forward, the air thick with anticipation and awe. His mind racing to comprehend the journey hinted at by her call sign and the skill displayed in flight. The mud-streaked uniform, the worn boots, all. Pieces of a story of perseverance hidden beneath ordinary life, and the suspense unresolved because the full depth of her struggle was only hinted at, waiting to be revealed in the final moments of their encounter. The hangar was quiet now, the plane resting on the tarmac engines cooling the morning sun, casting long shadows across the concrete. Sergeant Kane stepped closer, the SEAL Admiral hovering near the doorway, his eyes fixed on Maria, the single mother, pilot who had commanded the sky with effortless skill. And yet now on the ground she seemed ordinary again. The mud-streaked boots, the worn jacket, the faint smell of fuel and sweat, all masking the extraordinary history he knew must exist behind. Her calm, confident expression and the suspense coiled tighter as he waited for her next word. Maria leaned lightly against the plane, her hands resting on the cool metal, the SEAL Admiral swallowing hard and asking the question that had been forming. In his mind, since the first time she had lifted off the runway, how she had learned to fly, how she had achieved mastery that defied every expectation, her eyes meeting his, steadily unflinching. And then she paused a heartbeat longer, a shadow crossing. Her features before she whispered her call sign, the syllables, striking like a hammer on his chest, the weight of history and experience in that single word, leaving him frozen in awe, and the suspense snapping like the tension of a drawn wire. The sun reflected off the cockpit as she gestured for him to look closer at the instruments. The precision, the care, the subtle marks of routine and adaptation. The SEAL Admiral realizing that this woman had not only learned to fly, but had survived. Training and trials few could endure, the call sign now echoing in his mind, like a drumbeat, marking battles fought unseen. The hangar alive with anticipation, as if the plane itself were aware that the story was reaching its climax, and the suspense. Twisting tighter with every second, she spoke softly, recounting lessons learned in shadows, nights spent balancing motherhood and clandestine hours in flight schools unknown to anyone, the danger of isolation and poverty, each flight a test of skill. And will the SEAL Admiral, listening intently, realizing the scale of her perseverance, that every maneuver in the sky had been earned through grit and determination, the call sign resonating as the emblem of trials overcome, and the suspense building, because the full extent of her courage had not yet been revealed. Maria recounted her first solo flight, the fear, the exhilaration, the moment when she realized that mastery was not given, but taken through practice, patience, and courage. The SEAL Admiral, taking a step closer, feeling the pull of her narrative, the mud-streaked exterior masking a force forged through struggle, the call sign vibrating now in his mind as both identity and testament, the suspense coiling, as he realized that every word she spoke carried the weight of triumph and survival. She described nights spent in cold hangars, learning to read instruments by dim lights, balancing the needs of her children and the demands of flight training. The SEAL Admiral nodding slowly each, detail filling in the story hinted at by her movements in the cockpit, the way the plane responded as if it were an extension of her own body. The call sign, now fully alive, as a symbol of endurance, resilience, and determination, and the suspense, lingering, because he understood that her story was far larger than the moment he was witnessing. Maria moved to demonstrate a series of maneuvers, the SEAL Admiral watching intently, the plane lifting gracefully, responding to her smallest adjustments. The mud-streaked hands and sleeves belying precision and command, every motion the result of years of unseen effort and determination. The call sign now ringing in his mind not just as a name, but as a legacy, the suspense mounting as he realized that this flight was more than practice. It was a statement of survival mastery and defiance of circumstance. The plane banked sharply over the runway, skimming the treetops, Maria in complete control, the SEAL Admiral gripping the edge of the hangar doorway, the sunlight catching the wings and reflecting onto her focused face, the call sign repeating in his mind, each syllable heavier with meaning. The mud-streaked and worn uniform now irrelevant compared to the skill and courage demonstrated, and the suspense snapping taut, because he knew the final revelation of her history was imminent. She descended smoothly, hovering briefly over the tarmac, before landing flawlessly, the tires kissing the ground, as if caressing it. The SEAL Admiral, exhaling slowly, realizing that every maneuver had been intentional. Every motion part of a narrative of triumph over adversity. The call sign now etched in his consciousness as a symbol of perseverance, skill and courage, and the suspense lingering. Because he understood that the story of her life was written not just in words but in every motion she had made. In the sky, Maria stepped down from the cockpit, her boots sinking slightly into the mud-streaked tarmac, the SEAL Admiral approaching. Cautiously, awe and disbelief in his gaze, the hangar silent, except for the hum of cooling engines, the call sign echoing faintly between them, a key unlocking a lifetime of hidden trials and victories. The suspense building as he prepared to finally understand the person behind the skill, the struggles endured to achieve mastery, and the life lived between ordinary duties and extraordinary feats. She turned to him fully, her eyes steady, her face calm, the mud-streaked hair catching sunlight. The SEAL Admiral swallowing hard, the story of a poor single mother rising to mastery in flight, crystallizing with every detail. He observed the call sign resonating as a badge of unseen courage, a symbol of perseverance, and the suspense snapping taut, because the truth of her journey was now laid bare, and the impact of it hit him with full force, leaving him speechless. Maria gestured toward the plane, her voice soft, explaining the importance of every flight, each maneuver, each challenge a lesson, learned in patience, focus, and courage. The SEAL Admiral nodding slowly, understanding at last that her life was a testament to relentless perseverance, the call sign now fully alive as both identity and history, the mud-streaked and worn exterior, irrelevant compared to the extraordinary narrative of survival skill and determination, and the suspense finally resolving as the gravity of her story sank deep into his mind. She packed her kit and prepared to leave the cockpit, the SEAL Admiral, following silently, watching her every motion. Realizing that the ordinary exterior had concealed an extraordinary life, the call sign lingering in his mind as a symbol of mastery earned through sacrifice, the mud-streaked boots and worn uniform, no longer masking the truth. The suspense evaporating as the full story was revealed, and he understood the depth of courage and determination it had taken to rise above circumstance. Finally, she turned and smiled faintly, the SEAL Admiral stepping forward and extending a hand, acknowledgement, respect, and admiration in his eyes. The hangar bathed in sunlight, the plane resting silently behind them, the call sign echoing as a final confirmation of her extraordinary journey, the mud-streaked exterior, now a badge of honor. Every shadow of hardship transformed into triumph, the suspense dissipating, leaving awe and recognition in its place. And as Maria walked away from the plane, the SEAL Admiral watching the confident stride the mud-streaked boots. Leaving prints in the wet tarmac, he realized that skill, courage, and determination could defy circumstance. The call sign now a symbol etched into history, a reminder that even the most unlikely could rise to mastery, and that the story of a single mother had left a permanent mark on his understanding of resilience and strength. And the hangar seemed to hold its breath one final time in awe of what had just been revealed.